$133,516.
That is quite the specific number.
It really is, yeah. I mean, I want you to just kind of sit with that number for a second. Think about what it represents to you.
Right.
Because according to this massive 2026 survey by Howdy Research that we're doing a deep dive into today, well, $133,516 is the exact annual salary that Gen Z says they need.
Just to feel comfortable.
Exactly, to feel comfortable.
Yeah, and I think we should probably define what that survey actually means by comfortable, right?
Oh, definitely.
Because it doesn't mean buying a yacht, you
Yeah.
know? It doesn't mean you're living in a penthouse downtown.
Right, it's not some crazy luxury aspiration.
No, not at all. The respondents essentially defined comfort as just a lack of panic.
A lack of panic, wow.
Yeah, it's the baseline financial security required so that, like a broken taillight or an unexpected dental bill, doesn't trigger a full-blown existential crisis.
And I think that is exactly what makes this so jarring. You know, we aren't talking about aspirations of immense wealth here.
Right.
We are talking about the baseline cost of mental peace. But then when you look out your window at the actual 2026 economy, the math it slams into a brick wall.
Oh, absolutely. It's a harsh reality.
Because the national median individual full-time earnings right now sit at roughly, what, $62,600?
Yeah, right around there. So we have this psychological expectation, and honestly, perhaps a mathematical necessity of over $133,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that's paired with an economic reality that is paying, well, less than half of that.
Less than half.
Yeah. And that gap is where all the friction lives. I mean, 54% of Gen Z believes their required salary is fundamentally unattainable in today's job market.
Which is just, it's bleak.
It is. And that naturally bleeds into the next layer of the data, right? 73% of young adults are reporting persistent daily financial anxiety.
Look, I see those numbers, and I immediately think about how quickly older generations label that anxiety as, like, a character flaw.
Oh, the narrative is everywhere.
Right. You hear it all the time. Young people just don't know how to budget, or they want to start at the top.
Avocado toast.
Exactly, the infamous avocado toast. But if the gap between what you mathematically need to exist and what the world mathematically offers is like a literal canyon.
Which it is.
Yeah. Then anxiety isn't a psychological failing. I mean, it is a completely rational response to the environment you're in.
It is honestly the only logical response. Yeah. And, you know, that really brings us to the core mission of today's deep dive.
Right. What are we actually going to do about this?
Well, we've pulled a massive stack of sources for this. The Howdy research data, the latest from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the MIP Living Wage Calculator, and some localized housing data, too.
They got the receipts?
We do. And we are going to look under the hood of the 2026 American dream to see exactly why the engine is stalling. We need to explore the structural mismatch between what it costs to survive today versus what those entry-level jobs actually pay.
But, and I want to be clear here, we aren't just going to stare at a bleak spreadsheet for an hour.
No, definitely not. That would just be depressing.
Right. The goal here for you, the listener, is agency. We are going to break down the exact math of a starting salary.
Strip away the financial jargon.
Yes, the jargon that is essentially designed to obscure the truth, honestly. And we're going to look at 3 specific levers you can pull to start manipulating your own financial reality.
Because we can't control the macroeconomic climate, right?
Yes.
We can't change inflation single-handedly.
I wish we could.
Same. But we can control the response to it.
So the first step is really just acknowledging that the traditional game board has fundamentally changed.
Exactly. The macroeconomic realities of 2026 are just unforgiving. So we dropped the whole narrative about budgeting away avocado toast.
Because that literally does not work.
It doesn't work. We have to look at the structural math and then learn how to navigate it strategically rather than just, absorbing the stress.
So let's start with that structural math. Because to understand why someone feels they need $133,000, we have to look at the psychological trap of the traditional good job offer.
Oh, the offer letter trap.
Right. I mean, I remember graduating, and the absolute holy grail was landing a job that paid $60,000 a year.
It was the dream.
You get that offer letter, the number is printed in bold ink, and you think, I've made it? I am an independent adult.
And historically, well, you were. $60,000 was a fantastic entry-level professional baseline.
Yeah.
and it still sits right around that national median we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
But the psychological trap you're talking about is what we call the illusion of the offer letter.
Which means what exactly?
Well, you budget your life, you imagine your apartment, and you plan your whole lifestyle based on your gross income, the promise.
Right. The big, bold number.
Exactly. But the reality is your net income. The distance between those two numbers is where the modern financial shock begins for most people.
I want to break down that distance because literally nobody teaches you how to read a pay stub in a standard high school curriculum.
They really don't. It's a huge blind spot.
So you sign for $60,000. What is the actual mechanism that strips that money away before it ever hits a checking account?
It's essentially a waterfall of mandatory deductions. Let's call it the tax waterfall.
Okay, I'm visualizing a waterfall, a very sad one.
Right. So you start at the top with your $60,000. The first ledge you hit is federal income tax.
Okay.
If we assume you are a standard single filer in 2026, the federal government is going to withhold approximately $8,800 over the course of the year.
$8,800. So right out of the gate, before I've even bought a single cup of coffee, I'm down to $51,200.
Yeah, it hurts right away. Then you hit the second ledge, which is FICA.
FICA. F-I-C-A.
Exactly. This stands for the Federal Insurance Contributions Act. Now, a lot of people just view this as another generic tax, but it's important to understand the actual mechanism here.
What's it really doing?
FICA is your mandatory contribution to the National Social Safety Net, specifically Social Security and Medicare.
Okay, and this is where it gets a little tense generationally, right?
Oh, incredibly tense.
Because as a young worker, I look at that deduction and think, well, I'm paying into a system that I am constantly told will be totally bankrupt by the time I'm old enough to actually use it.
It is a massive point of generational friction, yeah. Because FICA is essentially an immediate wealth transfer from the current working population to the currently retired population.
Got it.
It operates purely on demographic math. And because the boomer generation is so large and people are living longer, the system requires a massive influx of capital from young, entry-level workers.
So it's basically pulling from the bottom to support the top.
Exactly. And on your $60,000 salary, your portion of FICA is going to be about $4,590.
Okay, so let me do the math. The federal government and the social safety net have pulled over $13,000 out of my pocket.
Yep.
But we still haven't accounted for the local level, have we?
Yeah, that's the third ledge, state income tax.
Right.
Now, the mechanism here varies wildly depending on your geography. If you are in Texas, Florida, or Washington, this ledge doesn't exist. State income tax is 0%.
Must be nice.
It is. But if you're in California, for example, you're interacting with a progressive tax system that climbs significantly.
So it averages out across the country.
Right. If we aggregate the data across the U.S., the national average state tax burden is roughly 4%. So we need to subtract another $2,400.
Okay, let me do the final tally on this sad waterfall.
Go for it.
We have $8,800 for federal, $4,590 for the FICA wealth transfer, and $2,400 for the state.
Right.
That is $15,790 that simply evaporates.
Good God.
So your $60,000 promise is actually a $44,200 reality.
And to make that actionable, we really have to look at it monthly.
Okay, break it down.
If you divide $44,200 by 12, your actual monthly take-home pay, the literal cash you have to work with to buy food, secure shelter, and, exist, is $3,683.
$3,683. I think that number is really the key to this whole puzzle.
It absolutely is.
It's like buying a ticket to an all-inclusive resort only to find out the ticket just gets you through the front gate.
Right.
And you still have to pay for the air you breathe. You are basically working from January through mid-March solely to pay the taxman before a single dime belongs to you.
That's a great analogy. And the broader mechanism at play here is cognitive dissonance.
How so?
Well, society expects a young professional earning $60,000 to participate in the economy at a certain level, right?
Sure. You're supposed to dress a certain way, commute from a nice neighborhood, buy certain things.
Exactly. But you are attempting to fund a $60,000 societal expectation with a $44,000 net reality.
Yeah, that math doesn't work.
It doesn't. That fundamental misunderstanding of gross versus net is what triggers the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle for almost half of young adults.
Well, let's look at exactly what we are spending that net money on.
Let's do it.
If I have $3,683 a month, how far does that actually go in 2026? Because I feel like every time I swipe a card for the most basic necessity, the price has just jumped.
It has. Let's break down the mandatory costs of adult life, starting with the largest mechanism of wealth extraction, the housing market.
The housing monster.
Seriously, according to the 2026 data from Zillow and Rent.com, the national median rent for a one-bedroom apartment is now $1,700 a month.
$1,700. I just want to pause on that. That is 46% of our take-home pay.
It's staggering.
Since I was a kid, the absolute golden rule of personal finance, the thing every advisor drilled into your head, was that your housing costs should never exceed 30% of your gross income.
Yeah, well, the 30% rule is essentially a relic of a bygone economic era.
It's dead.
Completely dead. For an entry-level worker today, that rule is mathematically impossible to follow in almost any major market.
Why is that, though? I mean, why has rent decoupled from wages so violently?
It isn't just standard inflation, if that's what you're thinking.
Okay, so what's driving it?
A few things. Following the 2008 financial crisis, new home construction plummeted for over a decade, which created a massive supply shortage.
Supply and demand. Basic economics.
Exactly. Then you had the post-2020 remote work migration, which completely scrambled local demand all over the country.
Right. People moving out of the expensive cities and driving up rent everywhere else.
Yep. And finally, you have institutional investors buying up single-family starter homes just to rent them out.
Oh, Wall Street getting involved in starter homes.
Yes, effectively turning housing from a basic shelter commodity into a highly optimized, yield-generating asset class for private equity.
So you aren't just paying for a roof over your head. You are paying a premium to compete with algorithms and private equity firms for a place to sleep.
Exactly.
You are house poor the absolute second you sign the lease.
You really are. And that $1,700 is just the beginning.
Oh, boy.
The modern economy operates on what we might call mandatory subscription fees for existing in society.
I love that phrase, mandatory subscription fees.
Well, you don't get to opt out of them. Let's look at transportation. You might have an auto loan. And Experian data shows the average auto payment is now $735.
$735 for just the car.
But the underlying mechanism driving up costs right now is actually insurance.
Okay, this is a huge pain point. I was looking at my own auto insurance renewal recently. I haven't had an accident, I haven't gotten a single ticket, but my premium jumped by 20%.
Yeah, you're not alone.
Why is the cost of legally driving a car exploding?
The 2026 national average for car insurance is $240 a month. And the reason it's skyrocketing isn't necessarily your driving record.
Then what is it?
It's the mechanics of what we are driving and where we are driving. Modern cars, especially EVs, are essentially rolling computers.
That's true.
A fender bender 10 years ago meant replacing a piece of cheap molded plastic. Today, a fender bender means replacing LiDAR sensors, backup cameras, and calibrated computing equipment.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
The cost of repair has skyrocketed, so insurance companies pass that cost to the mutual pool. Everyone pays.
So I'm paying for someone else's fancy bumper camera.
Exactly. Additionally, the increasing frequency of severe weather events is forcing insurers to write off entire fleets of flooded or damaged cars.
Right. Storms, floods, all of that.
Yeah, and the reinsurance rates, basically the insurance that insurance companies buy to protect themselves, are being passed down directly to your monthly premium.
So even if I drive perfectly, I am subsidizing the technological complexity of other people's cars and macroeconomic weather events.
That is exactly what's happening.
That's incredibly frustrating. So if you add that $240 insurance bill to a standard, say, $80 gas budget, transportation is eating up over $1,000 a month.
$1,055 to be exact.
Wow.
And then you have the utilities, keeping the lights on, the water running, and maintaining the high-speed internet access that is literally required to participate in the modern workforce.
Because everyone works from home or hybrid now.
Exactly. That adds another $275 a month.
$275.
And again, why is this rising? Because America's power grids are aging, and the multi-billion-dollar infrastructure upgrades are being funded by consumer rate hikes.
Like I said, subscription fees for society, they auto-renew every month, they constantly inflate, and your salary just does not scale to match them.
No, it really doesn't. And we haven't even fed you yet.
Oh, right, food. Kind of important.
Very. If we look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics data for 2026. A basic grocery budget for a single person is sitting at $375 a month.
And I think anyone listening who has stepped foot in a grocery store recently knows that $375 does not buy what it used to.
Not at all.
A single bag of groceries feels like $50 now.
The BLS data confirms your experience completely. The cost of groceries is up 31% compared to 2020.
31%.
Yeah. This is driven by supply chain fracturing, increased labor costs at the packaging level, and, frankly, corporate margin expansion.
So companies just charging more because they can?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And that $375 figure assumes you cook at home for almost every single meal.
Which is exhausting.
It is. If you buy a $12 sandwich near your office a couple of times a week, or grab dinner with friends once on the weekend, you easily add another $250 for modest dining out.
We also have to talk about healthcare. Because when you are young, you assume you are invincible.
Oh, to be young again?
Right. But the monthly premiums don't care about your immune system.
They do not. We pulled data from the Center for American Progress, which tracks this impartially. Between 2020 and 2026, Affordable Care Act premiums rose by an aggregate of 114%.
Over double. That's insane.
Even if you are fortunate enough to have an employer-sponsored plan, when you calculate your premium deductions, copays, and out-of-pocket minimums, the average young adult is bleeding about $350 a month into the healthcare system.
Just to have the privilege of going to the doctor if you're sick.
Basically.
Okay, let's add in a $90 phone bill. Maybe $150 for software subscriptions and basic digital tools. And let's say $225 for personal care. Haircuts, laundry detergent, deodorant.
Okay, so let's aggregate all this survival math.
All right, I actually have my calculator out. We have the $1,700 housing cost, $1,055 for the car, gas, and skyrocketing insurance, $275 to keep the lights and internet on,
Yep.
$375 for groceries, $250 for occasional dining out, $350 for healthcare, and $465 for the phone, digital tools, and hygiene.
Okay, what is the total cost of participating in society?
It comes out to $5,238 a month.
$5,238. And what was the actual mathematical take-home pay from that quote-unquote good $60,000 entry-level job?
$3,683.
So subtract the income from the expenses.
It is a negative $1,555.
Every single month.
I wanted to let that breathe for a second. Negative $1,555.
If it's heavy.
You do everything right. You get the degree, you land the median entry-level professional job, you live in a median apartment, and you are still drowning by over $1,500 a month just by existing.
And this is exactly why we started the deep dive with those anxiety statistics.
Right, it connects perfectly.
When the structural deficit is a negative $1,500, financial anxiety is not a mental health issue. It is a mathematical certainty.
You literally don't have enough money.
No. You are forced to subsidize your own survival with credit card debt or by depleting whatever savings you might have been lucky enough to start with.
So how do financial advisors usually tell people to fix this? Because clearly the math is upside down. I mean, what's the standard advice?
Well, historically, the cornerstone of financial planning has been the 50-30-20 rule.
Okay, explain that one.
The idea is that you allocate 50% of your net income to your basic needs, 30% to your discretionary wants, and 20% to savings and debt payoff.
But wait, based on the math we just did, our needs alone, the rent, the car, the health insurance, the groceries, are vastly exceeding 50%.
Yeah.
They are exceeding 100% of the take-home pay.
Yeah.
The 50-30-20 rule feels like giving a navigational map of Ohio to someone lost in a jungle in South America. It's completely useless.
It is entirely disconnected from the 2026 macroeconomic reality. You just can't use it.
So what's the alternative?
This is why you are seeing a massive shift towards zero-based budgeting among young adults.
Zero-based budgeting.
Yes. Zero-based budgeting doesn't use arbitrary percentages. It is a method where you account for every single dollar of your income, assigning it a specific job before the month even begins.
Until your income minus your expenses equals zero.
Exactly. Every dollar has a name.
But wait, if my expenses naturally equal negative $1,500, zero-based budgeting forces me to undergo, like, extreme austerity, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It requires what we call ruthless budgeting.
Ruthless budgeting. That sounds exhausting.
It is, But you cannot change the $1,700 rent overnight. You cannot negotiate your $240 car insurance down to zero.
True.
So you have to attack the margins. You have to aggressively audit that $250 dining out budget and drop it to $20 by bulk meal prepping rice and beans.
Oh man, rice and beans.
You have to look at the $150 in digital subscriptions and cancel all of them except a single $10 service.
Okay, I have a serious problem with this advice, though.
I figured you might.
I mean, if someone is $1,500 in the red because their rent is exorbitant and their power bill is inflating to rebuild the grid, isn't telling them to cut a $15 Netflix subscription kind of insulting?
I hear that a lot.
It feels like trying to put out a forest fire with a squirt gun.
Cutting out streaming doesn't solve a $1,500 structural gap.
You are 100% correct. A squirt gun does not put out a forest fire.
Right.
But you have to understand the psychological mechanism of ruthless budgeting. When you are trapped in a structural deficit, the feeling of complete powerlessness is incredibly dangerous.
It makes you just want to give up.
Exactly. It leads to financial apathy. You think, well, I'm already $1,000 in the red this month. What does another $100 on a nice dinner matter? And you just swipe the credit card.
You surrender to the deficit.
Yes. Reclaiming control over even $50 of your own disposable income changes your psychological relationship with money.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
You cancel the subscriptions and you stop eating out, not because it magically closes the gap, but because it acts as psychological triage.
Psychological triage. Right. It transitions you from being a passive victim of a broken economy to an active participant trying to stop the bleeding. It buys you the mental clarity needed to eventually tackle the larger structural issues.
Okay, that makes sense. It's not about the $15. It's about the agency. You are securing your own oxygen mask first, even if the plane is going down.
Precisely.
But I want to pivot here because everything we just discussed is based on national averages.
And averages can be deceiving.
Right, because nobody actually lives in the national average. People live in physical cities, and usually they are forced to live where the jobs are located.
Yes, geography is destiny when it comes to your financial survival.
So how does geography warp this survival math?
Where you physically plant yourself dictates the severity of the structural deficit. We pulled localized data from SmartAsset and Zillow to look at 5 specific major cities.
Let's hear it.
Let's start with the economic engines of the country. We'll call this the Coastal Crush, focusing on Los Angeles and New York City.
I have a feeling the Los Angeles math is going to be genuinely terrifying.
It's bad. In Los Angeles, you are dealing with a perfect storm. You have a highly progressive state tax code, massive housing shortages driving up rent, and a sprawling geographic layout that makes car ownership completely mandatory.
Yeah, you cannot rely on public transit in LA the way you can in Europe or even other U.S. cities.
Not at all.
No.
So the baseline salary you need just to survive in LA, meaning you hit a flat zero at the end of the month without saving a dime, is $120,000.
$120,000 just to tread water. And what does the average entry-level professional role in LA actually pay?
$55,000.
Wait, I need to process that. You need $120,000. The job pays $55,000.
Okay.
The gap is a negative $65,000 a year. How is that even a functioning society?
It is an environment of extreme wealth destruction. The mechanism at play is that young adults are moving to Los Angeles to chase career prestige in entertainment, tech, or media.
Chasing the dream.
Right. But because the wages are entirely decoupled from the localized cost of living, these young workers are literally subsidizing their employers.
Wow.
They are taking on massive personal credit card debt just to exist close enough to the office to do the work.
It's like paying an entrance fee to work. That's wild. What about New York City? Is the mechanism the same?
New York City is similarly punishing, though the mechanics are slightly different. You can ditch the car, which saves you that $1,000 transportation burden.
Well, that's good at least.
Sure, but the housing market aggressively absorbs whatever you saved. And we are talking about a high-rise in Manhattan here.
We're Rita.
To survive in the outer boroughs, like a basic walk-up in Brooklyn or Queens, you need a salary of $110,000.
And the entry-level roles pay what?
Around $62,000.
Leaving a negative DAP of $48,000 a year. The coasts are actively crushing young professionals.
They really are.
But over the last 5 years, everyone recognized this. There was a massive exodus from the coasts. Everyone chased the remote work promised land.
Ah, the Great Migration.
Let's look at a migration market like Austin, Texas.
Austin is a fascinating case study in how quickly a geographic loophole can collapse.
What happened?
5 years ago, Austin was the ultimate financial hack. You had no state income tax, vibrant culture, and relatively cheap rent.
Sounded perfect.
But the mechanism of mass migration completely overwhelmed the local housing supply. As remote workers with coastal salaries flooded in, rents doubled between 2019 and 2026.
So the people fleeing the broken math inadvertently broke the math in their new city?
Precisely. Today, to survive in Austin, the floor has risen to roughly $85,000. But the local entry-level jobs, the companies actually based in Austin, are still only paying around $67,000.
So even in the so-called promised land, you're running the deficit of $18,000 a year.
Yeah.
It's no longer a hack. It's a trap. Are there any cities left where the math actually works?
We looked at Chicago and Atlanta, which offers slightly better odds, but they're still fundamentally flawed. Break down Chicago for me. Chicago benefits from an incredible legacy public transit system. If you commit to living without a car, you remove a massive structural cost.
Which is huge, based on what we said earlier about insurance.
Right. But the survival need there is still $75,000, and entry-level pay is roughly $62,000.
So it's a negative $13,000 gap.
Exactly.
And Atlanta.
Atlanta currently highlights as the most financially accessible major U.S. city in our data set.
Okay, good news.
Well, sort of. The survival floor there is $72,000. With an entry-level average of $60,000, the gap is negative $12,000.
So the best major city in America still requires you to bleed $1,000 a month just to participate.
That is the glaring neon takeaway from this geographic analysis. In every single major city, LA, NYC, Austin, Chicago, Atlanta, the gap is negative.
Every single one.
Every single one. The systemic design of the modern economy requires young people to pay a premium to enter the professional workforce. Your entry-level salary is, mechanically speaking, a localized poverty wage when measured against the mandatory living costs of the zip code your employer requires you to exist in.
It really feels like Gen Z is being forced to play a rigged game of Monopoly.
Oh, that's a perfect way to put it.
Right, where every time you pass go, instead of collecting $200, the bank charges you $200 just for taking your turn. You are penalized for participating.
The Monopoly analogy is mathematically perfect. The rules of the board are currently designed to drain the players.
Well, we have diagnosed the illness, we know the math is broken, we understand the structural deficit, and we see how geography dictates the severity of the wound.
Now we have to transition from diagnosing the problem to exploring the cure.
Let's get into the action plan, because if you are listening to this on your commute or while walking your dog, the anxiety is probably peaking right now.
Don't panic. We have solutions.
How do we fight back? You said earlier we can't change the macroeconomic climate, we can't lower inflation, but we have 3 specific levers we can pull to manipulate our personal math.
Yes.
Lever number 1 is something called geographic income arbitrage. Let's start there.
Okay. To simplify the mechanism, arbitrage is the financial practice of exploiting the difference in price between 2 different markets.
Okay.
Geographic income arbitrage means securing a high salary from a company located in an expensive coastal economic zone while physically anchoring your life in a lower-cost interior economic zone.
Let's use our specific city data to map out exactly how this works in real life.
Sure. Let's say you land a remote entry-level role for a tech company based in San Francisco.
Awesome.
To the company, paying you $75,000 feels like a bargain because $75,000 in the Bay Area is barely above the poverty line.
Right.
But because the role is remote, you don't move to California. You take that San Francisco salary and you choose to physically rent an apartment in Atlanta.
And if we recall the math from earlier, the absolute survival floor in Atlanta is $72,000.
Exactly. By pulling this first lever, you take a salary that would leave you drowning on the coast, and simply by altering your geographic coordinates, you instantly flip a structural deficit into a $3,000 annual surplus.
Wow.
You solve the math without negotiating a massive raise. You solved it by weaponizing geography against the system.
That is incredibly powerful, but we have to be realistic here. Not everyone can be a remote software developer or a digital marketing manager.
No, of course not.
Our society requires physical labor, nursing, teaching, managing local logistics, building things. If your career requires you to physically exist in the location where you work, lever 1 is jammed. You can't pull it.
That is the unfortunate reality for a lot of people.
So that brings us to lever 2, supplemental income.
Relying on a single employer for 100% of your income is inherently dangerous in 2026. The gap exists because standard entry-level wages are artificially suppressed.
Okay, so what's the move?
To close that gap, you have to utilize the digital infrastructure of our era to build a secondary stream of revenue. Let's look back at Austin.
Okay, Austin.
The structural gap in Austin is roughly $18,000 a year, which breaks down to $1,500 a month.
So if you are living in Austin, your singular defining mission outside of your day job is to build a secondary income stream that generates exactly $1,500 every 30 days.
Yes,
And if you hit that number, the deficit drops to 0.
that's the goal. The mechanism could be freelance graphic design, specialized consulting, building digital templates, or leveraging the gig economy.
Okay, but this sounds exhausting.
Oh, I need to add a very stark reality check here. The internet is flooded with influencers selling the dream of passive income.
Right. Work from the beach, push a button, make money while you sleep.
They make it sound so easy. Supplemental income, especially when you are trying to close a gap, is never passive at the beginning. It is highly active, exhausting, grinding work.
So no beach days.
No. You are literally trading your evenings and your weekends to manually buy your way out of the structural deficit.
It is exhausting. But the beauty of lever 2 is that you control it entirely.
Right, you're in the driver's seat.
You don't have to wait for a boss to approve a promotion. You don't have to wait for the Federal Reserve to adjust interest rates. You can literally spin up a freelance profile tonight.
Exactly. It's pure agency.
Now let's look at lever 3, which is compound investing.
This is the lever that is most frequently misunderstood and, as a result, heavily underutilized by young adults. Most people believe you have to wait until you are earning that $133,000 dream salary to start building wealth.
Okay, I actually have to jump in and push back on this entirely.
Sure, go ahead.
We just spent 40 minutes establishing that the average entry-level worker is drowning in a negative $1,500 gap every month.
We did.
If someone is bleeding cash just to keep the lights on and buy groceries, telling them to start investing in the stock market feels completely disconnected from reality.
I get why you'd say that.
How can you possibly pull an investment lever when the machine itself is broken?
Your pushback is completely valid, and it represents the most dangerous misconception in personal finance right now.
How so?
It assumes that investing is only for people who have massive surpluses of cash. If you wait for the gap to completely close, or if you wait until the macroeconomic climate magically repairs itself, you will miss the only window of time that actually matters.
The window of time.
Right. You pull the investment lever not by solving the entire deficit at once, but by executing a micro-strategy in the margins.
Let's walk through this step-by-step micro-strategy then, because if we are going to invest while running a deficit, the sequencing has to be flawless.
That was one.
Step 1, acknowledge and manage the debt. We have to address the massive elephant in the room for Gen Z, which is student loans.
You cannot build a financial strategy that ignores the anchor tied to your ankle. According to the Education Data Initiative, the average Gen Z borrower is carrying roughly $37,000 in student loan debt.
$37,000.
Mechanically, this translates to a mandatory monthly payment of about $400.
So before we even think about buying a stock or opening a savings account, that $400 debt payment has to be integrated into our baseline survival math.
Yes.
It is as non-negotiable as the rent or the car insurance.
Exactly. You pay the minimums to keep the debt from defaulting and destroying your credit score, which would only make your housing and insurance costs inflate further.
Right. Bad credit means higher deposits and premiums.
Exactly. Once the debt minimum is accounted for, we move to step 2, the emergency fund target.
Financial advisors always talk about saving 10% of your income.
And we are going to apply that rule strictly to our net take-home pay.
Yeah.
If your take-home pay is $3,683, your target emergency savings rate is $368 a month.
And this is exactly where the concept of ruthless budgeting from earlier comes back into play, isn't it?
It connects perfectly.
You don't cancel your subscriptions and stop going to restaurants just to punish yourself. You do it to specifically hunt down that $368.
Yes, exactly.
You are auditing your life to carve out this exact buffer. Because if you don't have an emergency fund, a single flat tire will force you to swipe a credit card at 24% interest.
And the math will spiral out of control. The ruthless budget funds the emergency bugger. That is the mechanism.
Okay, got it.
Now we arrive at step 3, Microinvesting. This is how you engage the power of compound interest while still fighting the daily reality of the gap.
Break that down.
We're going to use two specific financial vehicles here, and we need to demystify how they actually work. The HYSA and the Roth IRA.
Let's start with the HYSA, the high yield savings account. Why is this different from the savings account I opened at my local brick and mortar bank when I was 16?
Because a standard legacy bank account pays you essentially 0% interest.
True, you get like a penny a month.
Exactly. The bank takes your deposited money, lends it out for mortgages and auto loans at 7%, and keeps all the profit for themselves.
Ah.
A high-yield savings account, which is typically offered by online-only banks that don't have the overhead costs of physical branches, shares that profit with you.
How much are we talking?
They might pay you 4 or 5% annual yield just for parking your cash there.
So this is where that $368 emergency fund should physically live.
Exactly. It isn't locked away in a volatile stock market where it could drop by 20% tomorrow, but it isn't rotting under a mattress being eaten by inflation either.
Right.
It is liquid, safe, and actively generating a small yield. The goal is to set up an automated transfer of even just $25 a month into this HYSA to build the psychological habit of paying yourself first.
Okay, now what about the Roth IRA? I hear this acronym thrown around all the time.
An IRA is simply an individual retirement account, but the word Roth is the mechanical secret weapon here.
What does the Roth part do?
Normally, when you invest money and it grows, the government taxes the profit when you sell.
Standard capital gains.
Right. A Roth IRA changes the chronological order of the taxation. You put money into a Roth after you have already paid your income taxes on it today.
Okay.
In exchange for paying the tax up front, the government agrees that all the growth, every single dollar of compound interest generated over the next 4 decades, is completely legally tax-free when you withdraw it in retirement.
But again, I keep going back to the mindset of someone in the thick of this struggle.
I know, it's hard to visualize.
If I am 22 and I am broke and my rent is $1,700, why on earth am I locking my precious cash inside a retirement account that I can't touch until I am in my 60s?
To answer that, we have to look at the mechanical nature of compound interest. Compound interest is not linear growth. It is exponential growth.
Okay.
It is a snowball rolling down a hill. When it starts, it is tiny. But as it rolls, the snow picks up more snow. Your money earns interest. And then next year, that new interest earns its own interest.
So it's wealth generating its own gravity.
Precisely. And this leads to the most important mathematical reality of this entire deep dive.
Lay it on me.
Even if you are trapped in a massive negative gap, even if you are ruthlessly budgeting just to afford groceries, if you can scrape together just $50 a month.
Like the cost of maybe one skip dinner and a coffee.
Exactly, just $50. If you put it into a Roth IRA starting at age 22, the math is mind-blowing.
What happens to it?
Let's assume you slowly increase that monthly contribution as you gain experience and pull lever 1 or lever 2 over the years. That initial tiny $50 seed, given 43 years to roll down the hill, can grow into over $379,000.
Wow.
Completely tax-free.
$379,000 originating from $50 a month.
Yes, because the core philosophy of wealth building is dictated by the calendar, not the calculator.
I love that. The calendar, not the calculator.
A person who ruthlessly budgets to invest $50 a month, starting at age 22, will mathematically dominate a person who waits until age 32 to start investing $500 a month.
I really want that to sink in for you listening right now. $50 a month early mathematically beats $500 a month later.
The start date matters far, far more than the starting amount. You build the emergency fund, you manage the debt minimums, and you micro-invest simultaneously, even in tiny $50 increments.
You can't just wait.
You cannot wait for the macroeconomic gap to close to start investing, because time is the only resource in the universe that you can never earn back.
That is so true.
You can eventually negotiate a higher salary. You can never negotiate to get the decade of compounding interest in your 20s back.
Okay, let's zoom all the way out and look at the massive landscape we've just covered.
They covered a lot.
We started this deep dive staring at a truly staggering number, $133,516.
Right.
And society looks at that survey data and dismisses Gen Z as entitled or disconnected from reality.
But they aren't.
No. When we opened up the hood and looked at the actual mechanics, the tax waterfall that strips gross income down to bare survival net, the $1,700 median rent driven by institutional investors and housing shortages.
The unavoidable societal subscription fees.
Yes, the skyrocketing sensor-driven car insurance and aging utility grids. We proved something profound.
What's that?
That $133,000 expectation isn't a symptom of entitlement. It is a highly accurate, intuitive reflection of the unforgiving math required to simply exist in the 2026 economy without suffocating anxiety.
The math absolutely proves that. The gap between the $62,000 median income and the baseline reality of expenses is structural.
It's built in.
It is not an individual moral failing. The systemic cost of participation is simply higher than the reward provided for entry-level labor in almost every major economic hub in America.
But the crucial takeaway is that the gap, while terrifying, is navigable. You don't have to absorb the anxiety and accept defeat.
No, you have options.
You can use geographic arbitrage to decouple your coastal salary from your local cost of living. You can grind out supplemental income streams to systematically neutralize your monthly deficit.
Right.
And you can leverage the exponential gravity of compound microinvesting, starting with just $50, to let the timeline do the heavy lifting for your future.
And that brings me to a final lingering thought I really want to leave the listener with today.
Oh, I'm ready for this.
We have spent this entire hour analyzing how to make the math of the traditional American dream work. You know, how to afford the standard apartment, the standard car, the standard career trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
But if the underlying math of that dream has become this structurally unforgiving, if the board game is genuinely rigged to drain the players, perhaps the goal shouldn't be to exhaust ourselves trying to afford a 20th century version of success.
What's the alternative?
Well, if Gen Z aggressively applies these three levers, if they embrace remote work flexibility, build decentralized side incomes, and utilize microinvesting outside the traditional corporate pension structures, are they just surviving a broken system?
Or
Or is this generation quietly designing an entirely new decentralized version of what a wealthy life actually looks like?
that is a phenomenal question to end on. Are we trying to repair the old game, or are we actively inventing a new one entirely?
Something to think about.
The traditional economic map we were handed is clearly out of date. The terrain has changed, but the levers of control are very real.
Very real.
So keep pulling those levers, no matter how small that first $50 pull might feel today. Start date is everything. Keep digging into the numbers, keep questioning the mechanics, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.